What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to episode 146, the Designated Players Podcast. Today, we cover two more amazing stories from early MLS days. We start with the story of early MLS's attempt to gain popularity. How did they do it? By signing a reality TV star to an MLS roster. Not just an MLS roster, but the MLS roster of the LA Galaxy. Move over, Beckham. It's Andrew Shue's time to shine. This is going to be followed by a story of Eddie Pope's towering header to win DC United's first ever MLS Cup. So make sure you stick around and stay tuned for both of those stories. My name is Andrew. I'm here with my good buddy Connor, and this is MLS History Retold. Connor, how excited are you on a scale of 1 to 10?
Well, considering I had no idea about the story you were telling, but just the little tidbit you gave there already made me roll my eyes.
You are going to love it. It's going to be so good. I can't wait for yours. I like moments of big goals or big games almost more than the crazy moments because they have so much more impact on people. So I'm excited for yours as well. But what I'm really excited for, most of all, is what scarf you're wearing.
Well, unfortunately, I don't have a scarf for either that was in the final. So instead, I just brought out an MLS Cup final scarf. This one happens to be for Seattle, but considering I am talking about the MLS Cup final,
The upside down
I'll
MLS
just
Cup final.
yeah. That's because DC flipped that game upside down.
Nice. Good
Yep,
recovery. Well
yep.
done.
Saved it.
I also don't have a scarf related to this topic, but I do have. I've got the United States scarf because this might be the most United States thing I've ever seen in my life. So this is going to be really good. Oh, man. All right. Why don't we just jump right into it then? In early MLS days, they knew that the hype of the World Cup wasn't going to be quite enough to bring in those big crowds that they wanted to compete with the other sports in America. But they did know one: reality TV booming. You want people to watch the league, get them to watch one person, and it'll still count. At this time in America, a show called Melrose Place was a popular TV series, basically taking a bunch of attractive Hollywood people, throwing them in a house, making them play characters, and putting crazy storylines. Very bachelor type of feel. But it was a spinoff of 90210. I've never seen any of those shows I just mentioned, but that's what people were saying. So the show Melrose Place, at its peak, right about this time, 1996, had over 15 million viewers per episode. People knew who these characters were. Our main character, his name is Andrew Shue. He played Billy Campbell in this TV show and was basically the star of the show. Everybody knew who Andrew Shue was. And that was just what the league executives, who would do anything at this time to keep this league afloat through its infancy, needed to hear. When the 96 season came around, Shue, who actually, funny enough, was an all Ivy League soccer player at Dartmouth, excuse me. So he had a bit of background about him. He was a brand ambassador for the sport. So in the 94 World Cup, he was very big in getting people bought into it. And, same idea that we're kind of going for right now. But once they made the announcement that LA would have a team, they asked him to be the ambassador for the LA team. He said, sure, but I also want a chance to try and win a spot on the LA Galaxy. He asked to go get a tryout. Let's before we get into the tryout, Shue wasn't just an actor. Before he went to Hollywood, he actually had a year of pro soccer experience in Zimbabwe, where he took the Bulawayo Highlanders to the Zimbabwean Super League Championship trophy. So while the owner and the head coach of the Galaxy were pushing and shoving, the owner wanted him because it would bring tons of eyes to LA. LA would be everybody's favorite team. The head coach didn't want him because they'd bring tons of eyes to the league and they didn't want the wrong sort of publicity for their team. So they pushed, they shoved, and by the time it was over, Andrew Shue got himself a tryout spot on the LA Galaxy. a Hollywood star who hadn't played in 6 years got himself a tryout with the LA Galaxy. The story about his tryout is the same no matter who you ask. He may not have been the most technical, but man, oh man, could this guy move. This wasn't a publicity stunt. He went out there and won every single fitness test the Galaxy put them. The 2-mile, the shuttle test, beep test, whatever they put at him, he came in first. And they said it wasn't even close. It wasn't like he just beat out Kobe Jones, who was known as the most fit player on LA at the time. He smoked it. He ran the 2-mile in 11 minutes. He was there to make the team, not just make the cameras look good. So after all this tryout happens, the Galaxy decided, yes, we will sign Hollywood superstar Andrew Shue to an MLS contract. They knew he wouldn't turn into a starter, but they figured, you know what? He's got a bit of pace about him. He's got a bit of strength. Let's see what he can do at the end of games. But back in the day, faxing files was the big thing to do when you needed to get something signed quickly. There was no other way to do it. So they send the contract to Shue's house via fax, and after 3 days, they get a fax back. And I'm going to quote Todd Durbin, the VP of Competition and Player Relations for MLS. I open it up, and I'm looking at it, and I have no idea what this is. It says, Billy, what are you doing tonight? Allison, I'm not sure. He sent me a script for Melrose Place. Apparently, he had run out of paper. So back in the day, in his Hollywood mansion, Andrew Shue didn't have a spare piece of paper. So he took a piece of the script that he was recording that week, faxed the thing on the back of it, and then signed it and faxed it back. Everybody tells a story about how Lionel Messi signed a contract on a napkin. Move over, bum. We sign things on the back of scripts for multi-million-dollar TV deals. This is MLS, baby. MLS agreed to let him be on the team as long as he fulfilled his ambassador duties as well. So in the game that we had spoken about in our first episode, San Jose versus DC, he actually flipped the coin in that first game to, hype everybody up because, again, everybody knew who he was. The press ate this up. This was brilliant in terms of getting eyes on the league. They loved this idea of somebody living the double lifestyle of a Hollywood actor and a MLS superstar, which was great because people got to watch this for one person and one person only, right? And that's okay at the early stages of what we were doing. And he actually got some game time. All in all, according to Transfer Market, he made 5 full appearances, almost about 100 minutes, and he recorded 1 assist officially against, can you guess? Of course you can, the New York, New Jersey Metro Stars. One thing that you will notice as we go through this entire series is the Metro Stars are really, really good at giving either players or teams their first something, whether it be their first win in a derby, whether it be their first goal in their career, whether it be the first hat trick in their career. Whatever it may be, we usually give it to them. He also, Andrew Shue did, set up a game-winning own goal in the game before that as well. So he was creating chances. He was doing okay. Andrew Shue said in an interview that this whole thing was basically a fantasy. And I quote, he would go from working with Heather Locklear in the morning training soccer in the afternoon with the Galaxy, and then playing in the Rose Bowl in front of 60,000 people on the weekend. I don't know how I looked into it, but the whole thing was a fantasy. That is a quote from Andrew Shue himself. So the question is, was this a desperate move to try and gain quick popularity with the Americans? Yeah. Did you see the best and brightest from what the league had to offer when you put him in the game? No, not even a little bit. Is it the reason where we are, that the league is where it is today? One might be able to argue that, which is why it's on this list. There is definitely a timeline in our multi-dimensional world where we do not exist, MLS does not exist without the signing of Hollywood superstar Andrew Shue to the LA Galaxy. And that is where I will leave my story.
Haven't there been a couple of other kind of superstar people that have gotten at least like trials with MLS? Like, didn't I feel like I remember a story where like Steve Nash had a trial with Sporting KC.
Chad
I feel like there was
Ochocinco had a trial with Sporting KC.
Ochocinco.
Yeah.
I thought Nash did too, because Nash I think is actually good at soccer.
Yeah, I thought he was maybe with Toronto because he's from Canada, isn't he?
Yeah, I guess Sporting KC wouldn't make much sense.
Yeah, there were definitely trials. Yeah, like those football, basketball players getting trials, but nobody's ever signed a deal like this. They signed this guy. And remember, by the way, he hadn't played in years. So it's the same deal. It's not like he was a pro athlete coming back and using just pure athleticism. This dude hadn't trained anything in years. The story went on to say that he would spend every non-shooting minute at Melrose Place either on a treadmill with a soccer ball, like really training for it. So, I mean, full credit to him. He went out and gave everything that he could to make this team, and he was rewarded for it. But never again will you see us signing a Hollywood superstar who just wants to play because we need more eyes on the league. That's why we have the designated players.
Yeah, I think I was wrong on the Steve Nash one, but I think you're right on. It might have been Ochocinco that I was thinking of, but
Ochocinco,
I mean, that's not like
vividly in my memory.
It's not like crazy uncommon. I mean, it's not common, but didn't Man United do that with Usain Bolt? Didn't they take him on trial?
I think Dortmund took him on trial.
I know somebody big took him on trial, but I mean that's a publicity thing. So like, you can't even say, oh, it's just MLS trying to get fans, which like, yes, that's what they were trying to do, and I think that makes sense considering it was their first year ever. But it's not just an American thing, clearly.
No, people will get trials all the time, but I think what's crazy is he actually got the spot. That's what that's what I take from this is, sure, they could have given him a trial and then been like, oh, look who's training with us, and everybody's like, oh, I wonder where he is. But no, they took him on and they put him in games and people would show up just to see him play. There were stories about, and I didn't include them in the story part of it, but his teammates would use him to pick up girls. Like they'd be talking to somebody at a bar, be like, hey, like this weekend, you want to go see them shoot Melrose Place? I know a guy. And they would get dates out of it because they knew him. To his credit, they said that he was completely one of the most humblest people you've ever met. Like he didn't come in thinking he was a big shot because he was in Hollywood or whatever. He came in and he knew his role. He worked really hard. And he was super nice too. Like he wasn't like an annoying guy. He was super, super good. So probably couldn't have happened to a better person, and really, really interested to see if we can, and it won't be this episode, but if we can put together a timeline of what wouldn't have happened if we didn't get eyes from Melrose Place on the league in 1996. That'd be a cool little butterfly effect research episode.
Yeah, honestly, I could just tell that this guy was definitely humble considering how hard he worked for this. I almost kind of wish that it panned out for him. Honestly, I feel like I'm rooting for him now, even though obviously it's way too late at this point.
I think he decided to pull away once he started to try because he had a kid in the first year of the league, and they were also trying to work him out of the show. So I think he was trying to move on from life in LA completely. He actually lives in New York now. He was upstate for a little bit in 2020 during COVID, trying to just kind of see it all out. So he's got a family up over in New York now, which is, again, good for him. So
yeah, it's a real shame we didn't see him in the first ever MLS Cup, which featured the LA Galaxy.
Your transitions are fantastic.
I know, they're on point today. But if you got nothing else to say, I will dive into Eddie Pope's gaming header for the first ever MLS Cup. So, as always, my source for this one, I was using the article on Wikipedia for this match, and also took a bit from the full match video on YouTube from the MLS channel. It is MLS Cup final time, and it is the 1996 version. The date exactly is October 20th, 1996, the day of the first ever MLS Cup final. And not to spoil things already, but it was a doozy. The game was set to be played in everyone's favorite Foxborough in Massachusetts. But the game actually almost got canceled due to a nor'easter that hit the area following Hurricane Lily. So, with that knowledge gained, I'm sure you can imagine that attendance probably not going to be at its best. And sure enough, despite selling 42,368 tickets, only 34,643 showed up for the game. But if you watch the full video on YouTube, you'll see that 35,000 people still showing up in the weather that was going on in that game is insane. Like I'll be honest, I did not expect the passion for MLS to be this high in year one. And I get it. Some of it is definitely like, oh, it's the new thing in town to do. But I still didn't expect it to be this hyped. So this game, as you could tell by still how people showed up, is still a massive deal. Don't get me wrong. Big enough to the point that the fire marshal had to come in and clear out the press box because it was getting too overfilled. The hype was here. MLS Cup Final 1996 was a big deal. It's certainly not as big deal as like the Super Bowl, but within its context, it had its hype. As always, for my stories, I will go through the starting lineups here. I will say, out of all the stories I've covered so far, these two lineups are the ones where I probably know the most players out of, and that's coming from someone who started following the league in 2015. So, star-studded teams going into this final. For DC United, the lineup was, and I'm going probably somewhat back to front for the lineup here. Mark Simpson, Clint P. or Pae, Jeff Agus, Eddie Pope, Mario Gori, Richie Williams, John Masner, John Harkes, Marco Echeverri, Jaime Moreno, and Raul Diaz Arce. A star-studded team for DC United, no doubt about it. Now, for the LA Galaxy, a.k.a. the future MLS coach FC, you'll understand that one in a second. It was Jorge Campos, Rash Noah oh my God. Arash Noah Moose, Mark Semioli, Robin Fraser, Greg Vanny, Chris Armas, Jorge Salcedo, Mauricio Cienfuegos, Kobe Jones, Harut Karapetian, and Eduardo Hurtado. As you could tell, there was a nice run of MLS coaches in that team. A1 Robin Fraser, Greg Vanny, and Chris Armas, all featuring for the LA Galaxy in the first ever MLS Cup final. All right, but enough about that. Let's get into the game itself. So how did the game play out? Well, Galaxy came out flying. Lots of chances early on, and that resulted in a goal for Hurtado just 5 minutes into the game. After he put away a header on a cross from Mauricio Cienfuegos. And what's the only way that you can celebrate a goal in a waterlogged pitch? Well, it's by sliding face first into the corner flag. And don't worry, this will be relevant again later. DC did play a bit more into the game as the half went on, coming up with a few chances here and there, but ultimately not being able to beat Campos. So when halftime rolls around, the score is 1-0 to LA Galaxy. Now let's jump into the second half. Galaxy came out in the second half much as they did in the first. A lot of control and a lot of chances. And ultimately, similar to the first as well, in the 58th minute, everyone's favorite RBNY manager, Chris Armas, doubled lead for LA Galaxy. Hurtado loses the ball outside of the box, but It falls to the foot of Chris Armas, who picks it up, dribbles past 4 defenders, granted mainly from bad defending, and slots it home for 2-0. At this point in the match, the pitch is a mess. The ball is barely moving. It is absolutely soaked. It looks miserable. It's partially snowing, partially raining. I don't know how the 35,000 fans that were there dealt with this, but it is a mess. So to score goals, it's not going to be easy. It's probably going to have to come from a lot of set pieces. And maybe that's a little foreshadowing because in the 71st minute, DC United get a free kick. Marco Echeverri lines up over the free kick, delivers it into the box, and none other than substitute Tony Sane finds himself open, heads it in, 2-1, game on. And this is where the DC United comeback begins. DC's potential comeback, though, was almost killed in the 78th minute, following a cleared ball that lands to the feet of Kobe Jones. And in this instance, Kobe Jones is in the box with no goalkeeper in the net because the goalkeeper came out to try and clear a corner. And somehow Kobe Jones missed it. He shot it, it clipped the top of the crossbar and went out. That was a really good opportunity to put this game to bed and get that championship for the LA Galaxy, but no luck there. For DC fans, bullet dodge, the comeback is still on. And then, sure enough, in the 81st minute, the comeback was fully on. Again, another free kick for DC deep in LA Galaxy territory, crossed into the box by Echeverri. Campos comes out, punches it, but ultimately didn't get enough on it. Punches it straight to substitute Sean Medved. Medved's first shot is actually incredibly saved by Campos, like a ridiculously good save. But unfortunately, due to that waterlogged pitch, the rebound falls right to the right of Campos. And Medved, credit to him, followed his shot in and puts it away for 2-2. DC at this point has all the momentum, but the game ends up finishing 2-2 in regular time. Now, let's dive into the rules here really quick for extra time. 2 15-minute period in extra time, with golden goal being the ruling. So first team to score wins, similar to how we previously did it in the NFL with overtime. If it's still tied after that, we go to classic MLS style penalties to decide the champion. However, we're not going to need any of that because it wouldn't take long for the game to be decided, as in the 94th minute, DC United win a corner. I guess you're sensing a theme here. It is a lot of set pieces for DC United. Marco Echeverri takes the corner, promptly delivers a fantastic ball into the box to find Eddie Pope, who heads it home and wins the game and the championship for DC United. After scoring the goal, Eddie Pope runs off towards the sidelines, and if you remember from earlier, we get another headfirst slide in celebration of the game-winning goal. I don't know if that was meant to be a shot at Hurtado's goal in celebration, or if it's just the pitch is soaked, let's try and dive on it. So, for those of you that know MLS history, will know that this is the start of the early MLS DC United dynasty. This is the first of many championships during this period of time for them. And in regard to MLS final MVP, considering that DC scored all of their goals off of set pieces, it was pretty easy to DC set piece taker Marco Echeverri as MVP of the first ever MLS Cup final.
There's a little part of me that forgot that this was a story about DC United's success, so I enjoy it a little bit less. However, the tied to this comment was the idea that when you went to RFK and you would celebrate a goal or anything like that, the stands would be shaking. I mean, to the point where the camera mounted on a steel beam is shaking with the stadium. That's how hyped that the stadium got. You mentioned the 35,000. I mean, again, things that people will remember and make them fans for life. The I can't wait to go back and watch this video because I didn't know that there was a nor'easter the day before. So I'm really excited to see what the game looked like when we do clips for
Oh,
our video.
it's a train wreck. That's all I'm gonna say. It looks
That's
miserable there.
brilliant.
I'm sure not take away anything from the passion of the fans, but I kind of feel like partially the reason they were jumping up and down was probably try to get feeling back in their toes.
Or they were excited they get to go home.
Yeah, that too. One of the two.
That's fantastic. Well, we hope everybody enjoyed those stories. I mean, again, things that this is early MLS, man. You don't get this with other leagues. You don't get the reality stars signing contracts and playing in the league. You know, the feeling, the understanding of the history of these goals, right? I mean, you always think about I think whenever I watch like big goals, right? We're thinking well, this is now about 25 years ago. A little bit longer, closer to 30, right? So that would put this right after uh, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's Champions League goal versus Bayern, right? For Man United. People talk about it all the time, right? This should be on that same level for MLS fans, right? It's stuff like this that makes the league so exciting that you understand where these goals come from, where these moments come from, and why they're so important. So we really hope you enjoyed that. And please give us a comment or anything below if you were there and your favorite moments as well. Um, Make sure you're following us wherever you get your podcast so you know when the next one goes live. And if we hold really quick, next one that we've got to close down the file. The next one we've got is these are fun ones. We've got the 1998 double in the expansion season of the Chicago Fire and the 1998 Wizards team that ate 2 meals a day at Olive Garden in Florida during preseason. That comes from the original creator of the MLS lore Iceberg, by the way. So that is going to be a great story to tell, and I cannot wait for it. So make sure you're on board and getting ready for that. The next thing you want to do is go follow us wherever you get your social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, or TikTok. We are always there posting clips. If you can't watch the whole thing, they'll be a little bit better edited than just the episode itself. So make sure you go and take a look at that as well. But thank you so much, everybody, for listening. We hope you had a really good time reliving that history with us. And we will see you next time on the next episode of the Designated Players Podcast. See ya.